and he described Karen's voice as amazing. Albert offered the brother and sister a recording contract. On April 22, 1969, Karen and Richard Carpenter signed their first major record deal. Karen was still underage at only 19 and had her parents there to co-sign. Richard was 22. It was a heady moment, but both siblings knew it was just the first step. Karen and Richard immediately went to work on their first album. It was time to try to make their dream of musical stardom a reality. Within 6 months of signing their contract with A&M, the Carpenters released their first album, titled Offering. The album did not make much of a splash, and there was pressure on Herb Alpert to let the duo go.
He had a lot of people around him after the Offering came out and didn't do all that well, saying, look, we told you it's too soft, it won't sell, cut your losses, let him go. And Herb said, in so many words, no, I just think there's something there. I'm going to give him one more shot. And that, obviously, is one of the greatest decisions he ever made.
Alpert not only gave them another chance, he found Karen and Richard their first hit, a 7-year-old song by one of their favorite composers, Burt Bacharach. However, Richard and Karen weren't crazy about the song, titled They Long to Be Close to You. Alpert insisted they give it a try. He told them that they could change the arrangement to suit their style, but they had to keep the piano riff at the end of the first bridge.
There are 2 5-note runs at the end of the first bridge. He said, I want you to keep that in. Do anything else with it that you wish to do.
Richard agreed, but added his own touch at the end, which would become the most recognizable and singable parts of the song.
I just pictured silence and then 4-part harmony, tripled, 12 voices. The whole bit.
Within 8 weeks of its release, Close to You was #1 on the Billboard chart. The Carpenters' ride had begun. Richard was 23 and Karen 20. Now all they had to do was produce another hit.
The follow-up to Close to You was a nerve-wracking time because there wasn't anything. I mean, Close to You was not cut as part of an album project. It was a singles thing. And there was Close to You and we got to find another song.
Fortunately, one night soon after the release of Close to You, Richard saw a commercial for a local bank on television. In that jingle, he heard the Carpenters' next hit. Within days, he and Karen were back in the studio recording a full-length version of the song. It would be their second #1 single, and a standard at weddings for years to come.
Sharing horizons that all knew she was, watching the signs along the way.
The duo's second album, Close to You, included both their hits and earned several Grammy nominations. Only 2.5 years after signing with A&M, the kids from Downey found themselves at the 1971 Grammys as multiple award winners for Best New Artist and Best Contemporary Vocal Group.
We still can't believe we even had a record out, but we couldn't do it, needless to say, without our producer Jack Doherty and Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss of A&M Records.
Suddenly, the brother and sister were in demand everywhere. They were now so well known that barely into their 20s, they had their lives reviewed on the popular program, This Is Your Life.
One of your favorite teachers at Downey High School, Bruce Gifford. How did Karen start playing these instruments, Mr. Gifford?
Well, to be honest with you, it started because she was trying to escape physical education.
I thought you were a baseball player.
They don't let you play baseball.
Oh, I see.
They just made
Okay.
you run a
All
lot.
right.
They booked themselves a non-stop touring schedule. In these early years, the road was less than glamorous.
But we'd still rent the Ryder truck, have a couple station wagons and sedans, and the guys, Karen and I, would load everything up and then unload it, set it up, then go out and do the gig, then sign all the autographs until every last autograph had been signed.
In many ways, the Carpenters' lives remained the same, despite their great success. They still lived with their parents and still loved Big Macs. The only difference was that now they had a whole lot more money.
You say we are. Are you a millionaire?
Yeah, Karen,
And
both.
separately?
Separately.
Not together.
No.
You don't have to pool to be a
No,
mistake.
no.
In 1972, the Carpenters returned to the studio to work on their fourth album. Richard still found or co-wrote their songs, arranged, and produced each tune. He often said his musical style was influenced by the three Bs, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Burt Bacharach. Richard also incorporated the vocal harmonies he'd heard in choral groups.
He had the musicality that a lot of people didn't give him enough credit for. He's an exceptional arranger and understood what he was producing. I thought if you listen back now, you know, because it's kind of cool now to listen back to the early Carpenters, you hear wonderful, wonderful ideas and vocal ideas and really cool playing in the background.
The overdubbing of their voices was one of the keys of the Carpenters' music. Karen would sing the lead vocal, then she would record the same line several more times. Richard would do the same with his background vocals. In the end, the tracks were all laid together to produce that distinctive Carpenter sound.
Their background parts, you know, the two of them together, it was just like, it was air and a choir at the same time. It was fantastic.
Though it made for easy listening, it was a difficult sound to achieve.
Richard's method of recording was very grueling. That was the other thing, is that, you know, it was all them. And that was very difficult because it was weeks and weeks and weeks of vocal overdubs and all that stuff.
These two people really spent days, months in the studio to get their sound, and unusual for the time, very unusual, because people made records in the late 60s and 70s, and you went in and you recorded and you sang, or you overdubbed, meaning you sang after the track had been laid down, and you're out of there. And they didn't do that.
In a replay of their childhood, Richard would be inside working on music, while Karen was out playing ball with the guys on the A&M lot. Just barely into her 20s, Karen still had much of the tomboy in her. But when it came time to sing, she was always ready.
Karen could close her eyes and visit a place that was universal. Karen went to a place that's exactly the same in every human being.
Richard seemed to have a sixth sense for picking songs that were perfect for his sister's voice. The song Superstar, especially, highlights the undercurrent of sadness that was a key to the appeal of Karen's voice.
Long ago,
he was totally in tune with his audience because he was his audience. He didn't have to figure it out. He was there. When you saw a Carpenter's audience, it was like Karen and Richard and all of their friends from Downey.
After Close to You and We've Only Just Begun, the Carpenters released a string of hits.
And every record that came out, zoom, up it would go, and it was just a magical time.
It was an amazing role, and it was a combination of incredibly hard work and preparation. I mean, Richard was really ready to make those records. You know, he was really ready, and Karen was really ready to sing them.
I'll say goodbye to love.
For the ballad Goodbye to Love, Richard decided to add a very un-Carpenter-esque rock guitar solo at the end. His request surprised even the guitar player.
He says, do more like you do that thing on that Dr. Fine song that you used to do. And I said, well, that's like totally just, you know, rock and roll, hard fuzz tone guitar. And he said, yeah, do like that. Okay. Today, that's not a big deal. Power ballads, we call them, the fuzz guitar solo. That's a very typical thing. But Richard actually, I would say, came up with that, and that solo on Goodbye to Love sort of holds up all these years as the, you know, the solo that changed all that.
Inevitably, Karen began to overshadow Richard in the public's mind. After all, it was her voice coming through their radio speakers.